Hello, today I will be talking about Agnes Denise, her background, and primarily her artwork titled Wheatfield: A Confrontation. Also, in advance, I apologize if I do any coughing because I'm currently getting over a cold. My thesis is with Wheatfield: A Confrontation. Agnes Denise raises awareness of the human impact on the environment and the importance of sustainable land use. Agnes Denise is a Hungarian-born American conceptual artist, writer, and poet. She is a pioneer of several art movements, including conceptual art and land art. Her work is often characterized by its use of scientific, philosophical, and mathematical concepts, and much of her work is mathematically driven, especially some of her more smaller works. Um, in the 1970s, she was motivated by a growing concern for environmental issues, so she shifted her focus then to eco art. She's mainly known for her large-scale public art projects such as Wheatfield: A Confrontation, which is the one I will be talking about today, and Tree Mountain, excuse me, a living time capsule, which was a forest planted in Finland. Her groundbreaking work, Rice Tree Burial, is widely considered as one of the earliest examples of ecological art. It involved planting rice seeds in a field, chaining surrounding trees, and then burying a time capsule filled with her haiku uh, in an attempt to create a powerful gesture that essentially intertwined human actions with nature. Wheatfield: A Confrontation involved transforming a 2-acre vacant lot in downtown Manhattan into a thriving wheat field. This location added a layer of symbolism to the to the sorry, to the piece as it confronted the contrast between the urban development and the natural world. Um, the planning and execution of the wheat field were crucial aspects. Her and a team of volunteers worked to cultivate the field, turning an otherwise neglected space into a vibrant installation. The golden wheat served as a striking visual contrast against the concrete and steel backdrop of New York City, not only in terms of color but also scale. I see it as this sort of safe space among all these large, cold feeling, towering man made structures. Obviously, the intention was to have viewers reflect on the impact of their uh, activity on the environment. Um, but beyond its visuals, it was also a exploration of various themes, including you know trying to raise awareness about the issues of land use, the loss of natural spaces in urban environments, and the disconnection between people and the sources of their sustenance. And by bringing a functioning wheat field into the heart of the city, she attempted to challenge societal perceptions and therefore also provoke dialogue about our relationship with nature. Um, she was really at a disadvantage in terms of trends at the time. She had to make something that couldn't be in a museum for a very long time. This was a temporary piece from the beginning, which was a pretty big contrast to the permanence that many artists kind of sought after, you could say. And as a woman in a male dominated field, she also faced some hurdles as well. Her Between her conceptual approach and her large scale ideas, they were primarily dismissed by a more conservative art world that I guess you could say they were more focused on traditional forms of expression. And here's just a quote from one of my sources that I feel like it says a lot about her, who she is, and I guess you could say how determined she was when it came to making this piece. It says initially, Denise says the public art fund, excuse me, encouraged her to grow wheat in the quieter borough of Queens. She refused, setting her sights instead on the 92-acre Battery Park landfill, then one of the last undeveloped sections of Manhattan. The interactive aspect of the project is probably the part that I find most fascinating, since it transforms the community from passive observers to active contributors. So by involving them directly, she essentially disrupts like traditional power dynamics when it comes to urban planning. So like normally, decisions about urban spaces are made by like city officials, architects, and planners without like substantial input, you could say, from the people who live in and around those spaces. But through this interaction, she is essentially giving agency to the community and allowing them to participate in the transformation of their surroundings, which is something I really enjoy about this particular piece. It also kind of challenges the notion that urban planning should be a top-down process, and instead it advocates for a more inclusive and participatory approach. The life cycle of the wheat, from its initial growth to the harvesting, it also represents a microcosm, I guess you could say, of the natural world within the urban landscape. So participants become witnesses to the dynamic. Participants, therefore, they become witnesses to the dynamic nature of the environment they helped create. So this challenges the traditional urban planning emphasis on permanence and stability. It also invites a deeper contemplation of the ever-changing character of urban environments, emphasizing the need for adaptability and flexibility. It also introduces a temporal element to urban design, by being intentionally temporary, which is something that I personally really like about it. This challenges the traditional idea of excuse me, of permanence in urban planning. That like once a building is made, you think about it like it's there forever. People will say things like, "Oh, I remember when there was just nature over here, and now it's full of development," for example. Um, and the nature of the wheat field highlights that need for flexibility and adaptability once again, in an attempt to, I guess, suggest that our use of the land should also evolve to meet like our needs. The participatory nature of the project, involving the local community in the cultivation of the wheat, also critiques the top-down approach often associated with urban planning. Denise advocates for community engagement, suggesting that decisions about urban spaces should include the perspectives and desires of the people who inhabit them. And the wheat field can be seen as as a symbolic critique of the impact of modern day urban planning decisions. And by introducing a natural, sustainable element into the landscape, she's essentially questioning the environmental consequences of the decisions to remove those green spaces. And I feel like it serves as an excellent an excellent reminder of the importance of how we should integrate nature into everyday society. And here's some of my written work from the essay. One of the central themes of Wheatfield: The Confrontation is preservation. Denise's decision to cultivate a wheat field in an urban setting was a deliberate act of preservation, as it reclaimed the derelict space and transformed it into a flourishing landscape. The contrast excuse me, the contrast of the natural environment with the urban landscape served as a commentary on the importance of preserving natural resources. Denise's work highlighted the need to reevaluate our relationship with the environment and emphasized the significance of preserving green spaces within urban areas. The interactivity of the artwork was a key element to the installation. Denise invited the public to participate in the project, engaging with the community and fostering a sense of collective ownership over the artwork. The interactive nature of the installation encouraged dialogue and reflection, prompting viewers to consider their role in shaping the urban environment and their responsibility towards environmental conservation. By actively involving the public in her artistic process, Denise promoted a sense of shared responsibility for the preservation of natural landscapes within urban spaces. And here are just some sources that I used. I found this article right here to be especially interesting. It talks about her background, some of her mindset when creating Wheatfield, and a special exhibition with her works that occurred in 2019, which was I thought it was pretty fascinating to look at some of her lesser known pieces. And this video, um, so essentially, somewhere a while back, I kind of saw a quote somewhere that said something along the lines of, "If air pollutants were black instead of invisible, we would have solved climate change a long time ago." And I honestly feel like there's a little bit of, I feel like there's a decent amount of truth to that. But essentially, the video just covers why climate change, despite being something very important, can also be difficult to face head on for so many of us. Because if it's not visible or affecting us directly, it can just be kind of hard. But with Wheatfield, Denise is essentially removing that barrier by allowing visitors to not only see the Wheatfield but to be a part of it. And here is my artwork that I made. It's a 3D recreation of the wheat field, and I had to kind of eyeball it, but it actually should be very close to being 2 acres, the exact same size as the actual one. I wanted to place it. Excuse me. I wanted to place a big emphasis on recreating the feeling of the photograph, specifically the one of her walking in the wheat field with the overcast sky, since I love the juxtaposition of the subjects, but also in terms of scale and color. The wheat field sort of being all encompassing and having this kind of like safe feeling was really something I wanted to implement, since in the photographs, the field just seems to kind of stretch on forever. I also added some film grain and I tried to make it look a little washed out to really sell the vintage kind of appearance. Um, I also really wanted to add buildings all around the players so that no matter where they look, it's like they are looking through the photograph in a way. But unfortunately, since the space is fairly big, I didn't have time to. But I do have a little video that I've recorded. 1 second. If I can. I also wanted the wheat to kind of be like interactive. I wanted to have it move when the player moved, but I wasn't able to implement that in time. But I was able to get a little bit of wind going in there. Um, but yeah, I really tried to um, put a lot of emphasis on the wheat field just surrounding the player, sort of. Um, but yeah, I definitely had a lot of fun making it. And yeah, that is my presentation. Thank you for watching.